Hello and welcome to Rose Red Studios, where we talk about all things storytelling. And today we are talking about art style, which is always a big deal, right? I mean, if you work in arts and you want to have any kind of paid work, style is very important. Now, I'm specifically talking today about how I developed a style for my comic, It's a Working Dog's Life. This is different than developing a style of if you're like an illustrator and you're looking for clients and you need a portfolio for that. When you are an illustrator looking for clients and you have to have a portfolio, you need to focus on creating an overall style. Like all of your art needs to be pretty consistent. With something like what I'm doing with A Working Dog's Life, I developed a style that's very specific for the project. That is all I concerned myself with. I didn't worry about if it's like my entire style, all of my art matches this one project. And that was very freeing to me because it was kind of stressing me out to try to be like, oh, like I need to make this comic and its needs fit into other work that I'm doing that's completely unrelated. That is making that decision to treat this as its own separate project really freed me up to experiment more. The main things that we need to remember if you're developing an art style for a comic, first of all, it needs to be a style that enables you to do a lot of expression. You need to have a style that, whether you're doing people or animals, you can create facial expressions that express emotions. Number two, it needs to be a style that you can recreate over and over and over again, which, there's a certain level of complexity that you don't want in your comic style if you want to be able to do it really consistently over and over and over again. Three, you want it to be a style that you can, to a certain extent, produce quickly. If every single image that you're making is taking you like 10 hours, there might be some things you can do to refine that a little bit. There are some artists, I will say, there are some artists who, it takes them 3 hours a page and that's their work process. That's fine. It was really important for me personally because I do have another job and a life and a dog that takes as much general care as a toddler, to have a style that I could quickly produce a comic every single week. So these were the three main things that I took into consideration as I was developing a style. Start to finish and deciding this is what a project I was going to take on. I gave myself about 18 months. And the majority of that time I spent just trying every style possible for my characters. And just figuring out that process of like finding those three main things: a style that was expressive, a style that I could consistently reproduce, and a style that I could reproduce quickly. So let's take a look at the process. And you can see this is just like a hint of how many different styles I explored. But first, I'm going to introduce you to Casey, who is the star of my comic because she is the leading lady in my life right now. And so you can see, starting off, like what I was trying to reproduce in this character.
Okay, so we're going to get started by introducing you to Casey, our 6-year-old Akita Shepherd mix. I wanted you to get a real good look at her because this is who I am trying to draw. And you can probably tell from the look on her face that she's a very expressive dog. She is right now expressing that the dogs next door are barking and she's considering joining them. And so this is my jumping off point. We have decided to join them, by the way. And I started from there. Okay, so the first thing I actually did was take a little online course on drawing dogs. This ultimately did not help me at all, but it did at least kick me off and like over that first hurdle of starting character design. So I did a lot of practice of just dog heads. I also did a lot of practice of different styles of dog features, like their eyes. So here's an example of like I just tried a bunch of different eyes that I'd seen various illustrations do. Then I started actually drawing straight from photographs of Casey. I really liked this one, but there were so many layers involved in just this one illustration that it became very clear that this style was going to be way too intensive, and like there's no way I could keep up with the file size on this. If just one of these, you could tell how many layers it has. So I tried next to do watercolor, which I thought was cool, also very labor intensive. And one thing that mistake I was making in this phase was I was too hung up on making the character look exactly like the original dog. That is something that I eventually learned to let go of. But in this phase, that was where I was like, I wanted to look exactly like Casey. This one, I decided to try a style I'd seen another illustrator do, and I thought, well, I'll start there and kind of like jump off. This is my least favorite of all of them. I got done with this and I was like, I absolutely hate this. But, you know, sometimes you got to try to realize that you absolutely hate a style. Now, the next thing that you're going to see that I found was I actually found on YouTube an animator from the Fox and the Hound cartoon. Someone uploaded a series of videos he did on how he did that cartoon. And you can see the original like wireframe that he does underneath and then develops into this character. And I did all the way to the through it, and I made Casey look like a Fox and the Hound character, which was fun, but also too labor intensive for each character. Now, we are going to come back to this because this was a revolution in and of itself. But first round, I was taking way too much attention, way too much detail, and I just knew this was going to take too much time. Now, this is the moment when I thought I had it. Something about this said, like, yes, I finally have the character, and I'm going to jump off with this character. It's kind of a good melding of both, like, looking like a cartoon character, but also still looking like Casey. I'm going to go with it. I actually did 13 episodes in that style. I never published them, but I did do a ton of episodes. I did multiple characters in this style. As you can see, like, I was trying to figure out how to do expressions, different angles of the head. I even got so far as, like, making a logo for these episodes that I did. It's like, that's really cute. And, you know, like, me revisiting this as I'm making this video, I still really like this style. I think it's adorable. And very enjoyable. It just still also was way too much work. It was a ton of work to produce each one of these. There was nothing I could really use over and over again. And on top of that, there's just so many layers. It was very intensive. File size is huge because of all the layers. And so I finally had to let this go. 13 episodes in, I dropped it and I said, like, this is not exactly what I was looking for. So I went back to that wireframe that I found from the animator of Fox and the Hound. And something about this just called to me. And around the same time, I also happened upon the painter El Gato Gomez, and specifically this painting, which I had to buy a copy of. And I realized, like, I've always loved this mid-century style and these bright pops of color, and I just want that to show up in this comic. I want to go a completely different route and just, like, really go for what I love in character design and animation. So I pulled up that wireframe and I just started drawing a really simple overlay of it, fleshing it out. So this is also the place where I gave up with it, like, has to look exactly like Casey, and instead kind of just wanted to find her essence, you know, some basic markings that she has that are kind of special for her. But we don't need to get the whole brindle coat in. And this also allowed me to, like, put in just a ton of color and a really, like, simple background. So this is the style I ultimately went with, and I have drawn like 60 episodes now at this point. It just gave me everything that I wanted. I was able to make the characters very expressive. It was a style that I could apply to a lot of different types of dogs. And I could put just huge blocks of fun color just to, like, I don't know, it just automatically makes it fun when I find these ways to put in a ton of color. And plus, you know, you get all the sides of Casey, from the complainy to the grumpy to the happy. I applied the same wireframe to these characters here, and I was able to very easily manipulate it to make different types of dogs. So that is kind of the process I went through. It took a lot of months and a lot of time, but it ultimately was worth it to get to this point, because this design, this style, serves all of the functions I needed. And so, like, I just feel like it was worth it to go through all those styles.
All right, quick wrap up here. Now that you have seen just a few of the styles that I went through during this process, I honestly looked at so many different references, so many different artists doing dogs, tried so many different things before I found the final style I went with. I do have a video on here on how I've used this style to then create assets out of my characters so I can recreate them very easily. And I have another video of how I use that wireframe to then create new characters and new poses. So I'll link both of them in the description. I hope this helps you as you search out your style and what suits your comic the best. The most important thing is to find something that you really love and really inspires you. I love doing the like really intense colors and the fun backgrounds and just all the ridiculous expressions that this dog can give me. So it's a style that I have a lot of fun with, and that I think is as important as all the other things, the expressions, the ability to reproduce, the time it takes you to reproduce. It's also just really important to enjoy the style that you're doing. So good luck, and leave me a comment if this has helped.